If you would please, sir, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background. Um, are you from Oklahoma? What's your career path? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, yeah. Jeff Starling, candidate for Attorney General, currently Oklahoma Secretary of Energy and Environment. I was born and raised in a rural part of Southern Virginia, right in the North Carolina border. It was a area that had been defined by textiles and tobacco, so it didn't fare particularly well economically when I was coming along in the 80s. But it was the heart of the Bible Belt, if you will, and so it's a place that you did learn a lot of faith, grit, and perseverance, and that instilled a lot of lessons in me at a very early age. And so I went from there to college, and after college, I ended up in D.C. In D.C., I worked in the United States Senate for the chairman of the United States Armed Services Committee in the Senate, and that's where I met my now wife. My wife was with Jim Inhofe at the time, and one of my coworkers was her roommate. She's from Oklahoma City. Her family goes back several generations in the McAllister area. And we got married. I went back to law school. I practiced law at a national level for quite some time. And then we moved to Oklahoma City in 2012 when I became the head of litigation at Devon Energy. And so I did that for quite some time. And then last 5 years or so, a couple of friends and I went and took over the senior management team of an oil field services startup company. It was private equity backed, and we built that company up in Oklahoma. And then we had a basin in Midland Basin in Texas as well. We built that company up and sold it last year. And then shortly thereafter, the governor called and offered me the Secretary of Energy and Environment spot, and I joined him in November.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question is how long you've been with the governor. We've obviously known him a long time, and he was here a lot when he was campaigning back in 2018, 2017 timeline. So how has that been? What's that experience been like working under the governor in for state government?
It's been good. It's been good. You know, the transition from I'm a private sector guy. My roots are in the private sector, and that's where my home really is. So public sector is a little bit of an adjustment, but it's nice to have that public service and give back a little bit. The governor's been a great boss. I serve on his cabinet as Secretary of Energy and Environment. I sort of describe that job as having three legs to the stool, if you will. One is typical cabinet secretary work. I'm the governor's chief advisor on energy and environment matters, and dealing with the legislature and that sort of stuff is part of that cabinet secretary function. Another part of it is the second leg of the stool, if you will, is the business development aspects of the job. So my position gets brought in more and more to help recruit businesses to the state of Oklahoma. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. We're an energy state, an oil and gas state, so a lot of companies looking to come to Oklahoma are oil and gas or energy-based companies. But a lot of them, even if they're not direct energy investments, have a lot of need for it. They need a lot of electricity, for example. Think heavy industry, those type of things need a lot of electricity. So my office gets involved with that. And sort of the third leg of the stool is dealing with D.C. As you might expect, with the Trump administration coming in, it's been a sea change. They actually reach out and ask, well, hey, how can we help states work better, right? Which is something that's just 180 degrees different than the prior administration in D.C. So the outreach from the Trump administration to the states has been very nice and very good. It's been a breath of fresh air, and so we've been able to work with the Trump administration to help shape. Help inform them as they're developing policies and regulations and executive orders to give them a state's perspective. That's part of the D.C. aspect. The other part is National Governors Association. Governor Stitt became chair of the National Governors Association on the 1st of July. He's able to push certain initiatives as the chair, and some of those are energy related, so we help support those as well.
I do want to talk about your campaign for AG, but you piqued my interest on the energy thing because I know the governor has talked a lot about that being such a big industry. Of course, it's a huge industry in Oklahoma. What do you see as the future of energy in Oklahoma? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've heard the governor advocate for all forms, whatever it may be. Yet I don't think the president is quite on that page. So do they see eye to eye on energy like wind?
I think Oklahoma is an oil and gas state. We are an oil and gas state. We will always be an oil and gas state. I think some of the semantics maybe get lost, but I think President Trump and Governor Stitt are largely aligned here, and that is really that we need to get government incentives out of choosing one energy source over another. And a lot of the pushback we've seen here in Oklahoma against wind and solar are caused by what really were supercharged incentives from the Biden administration that supported those those types of energy sources over traditional oil and gas type activities. So I think a lot of the problems that we hear about and a lot of the pushback that we see will resolve itself if government just gets out of the way and quits picking winners and losers, lets the free market decide. And we feel like the oil and gas industry, in particular in Oklahoma, is very well positioned if industry is just able to compete.
So you said you've been a long-term, until this position, a private sector guy.
Yep.
Now you've been doing this for a little while. What was it that got you thinking to run for AG?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm a firm believer in our founding fathers' vision of public service, and that is you make a living and you make a life in the private sector. You go serve the public, and then you get back out. And so with that as kind of a core belief of mine, when looking at what comes next after the secretary spot, the timing just lined up right. Previously, I've never been able to do public service because I had a client base as a lawyer or something like that, which prevented me from doing it. But Governor Stitt's term ends in, let's call it 18 months. My job as secretary will end then. I'm making a career change then at that point anyway. So the timing just kind of worked out for me to step in. And I look at, so the question is then why now, right? The timing works out. Why now? Well, I'm positioned well, and I've spent my career pushing back and fighting against plaintiffs' lawyers and agenda-driven radicals that have undermined significant parts of what Oklahoma holds dear. You think of oil and gas industry, you think of agriculture, you think of our law enforcement. All these are entities and areas that I've defended lawsuits in the past. And so I want to protect Oklahoma's way of life, and now it's more important to do that than ever. And I think also when you look at where Oklahoma is, having a private sector person come in, not just a career politician looking for the next rung on the ladder, having a private sector person come in and provide fresh perspective is vitally important for this state as we look at what's coming forward in the next 10 years, as Oklahoma, I think, is strongly positioned to really capitalize on growth and in development and economic development and success over the next 10 years. And you need that private sector experience coming in and providing that perspective and really somebody that's there to serve Oklahomans and not just the political class.
Have you thought about, say, 3 things that if you're elected Attorney General will be your top priorities? What would those be?
Yeah. And I think my top issue, I call it 1A and 1B because I think they're the opposite sides of the same coin, is fentanyl and illicit marijuana. If you take marijuana, for example, we grow, this is based on a 2025 study, so just earlier this year, something like 32 times, not percent, but times more marijuana in this state than we legally consume. I read recently that Oklahoma is responsible for 50% of the illegal marijuana grown in this country. It's a large industry, and the reason I say it's related to fentanyl is both those are backed by Chinese organized criminal activities. So you have Communist China, who's standing up criminal organizations that are largely run out of coastal cities like New York and other coastal cities, and are standing up these rings that are pushing this stuff on our children and across the world and across the country with illicit marijuana and fentanyl. So we need to get our hands around that, and there are tools that we can do to do that. The second issue, I think, is really making sure we support President Trump's vision and directive on illegal immigration. We have a mayor here in Tulsa who's pushed back against President Trump on that, and we need to make sure as a state that when we arrest people here for doing bad things and they're here illegally, that they're deported, and we cooperate with federal immigration forces to make sure that's done. And if municipal resources won't do that, the state will be in position to step in and do that and make sure that illegal immigrants who do bad activities are turned over to federal immigration officials. And then finally, the third thing is really getting politics out of the office of the Attorney General. That office has become more and more political over the last many years. We have a current Attorney General who's basically been running for governor since his first day in office, and no disrespect to him, but he's supercharged the political, the politicization of that office, but it predates him as well. And you need somebody there who's not beholden to the political class, who can get politics out of the office, who gets back to calling the balls and strikes that that office should be doing, and really focusing on the uniform application of law across all of Oklahoma and for all Oklahomans.
Let me back up to what you said about illegal immigration, the Tulsa mayor. What actions has he taken that you disagree with as far as working with the Trump administration?
Well, I don't know his specific actions, his words, though, and I imagine his words follow his actions, right? And his words have been to the effect that that he's not willing to cooperate with the Trump administration on deporting illegal immigrants, especially ones that have been here engaged in criminal activity. And so we're going to make sure that does not happen in Oklahoma.
And then on the politicization of the AG's office, I'm glad you brought that up because I am curious. It's a partisan race. Are you running as a Republican?
I am, yeah.
Okay, and
I'm not running as a Republican. I am a Republican.
Right, I know. Well, yeah, but that's how you filed, right?
Well, in that dilemma, you have to ask, right? Because we do have some folks running as Republicans who aren't real Republicans.
But how does that shape how you carry out your duties, or does it? You said you want to make it not political.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm a Republican because I'm a conservative. That's how I view the world. That's how I view the law. That's how I view Oklahoma. I think most Oklahomans agree with me on that. But that's different than using lawfare, for example, that sort of thing. We've seen that at the national level quite a bit. We can't have that at the state level. We see political leaders now picking fights for the sake of just picking fights rather than really being focused on the common application of the law and uniform application across all Oklahomans. So the public, if you think about the offices that are up for election, the statewide offices, you have governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, on down the list. The public must have the public must have trust in the attorney general more so than any of those other offices. They're all important, but the office of attorney general deals with people's liberties and freedoms, deals with things that really get to the core of our founding fathers' vision of what it is to be an American. And the public has to have the trust in the Attorney General, and that's my commitment to make sure that happens. Part of that's getting politics out of the office.
To bring this all full circle, you said that Governor Stitt is obviously going to be at the end of his term. You're moving to your next thing. What we have seen is this butting heads of the two offices, AG and governor. So if you're elected AG, there's going to be a new governor. We don't know who yet. Could be the current AG you mentioned. How would you work with whomever it is and to try to keep a good relationship?
Yeah, I think it's very important for the state that the two top elected officials in the state have a good working relationship, at least as best they can. And we've seen that in other states, that when officials don't have a common vision and aren't working together, that it really serves as a detractor for the state. It's in the best interest of the state if we all kind of have a common vision and we're rowing in the same direction, if you will. With that said, the Office of Attorney General is a separate branch, a separate office. It's a constitutionally elected office. As Attorney General, I have my own areas of responsibility and own duties, and those are separate from the other elected officials. So you have to maintain those. I think part of this is we've gotten part of the disagreement that you've mentioned is caused by we take our differences and air them, I think, a little bit too often. We're so quick to go to Twitter or Instagram or something like that and send out a big nasty message. And I think really it's in the best interest of the state when it can happen, which is usual, to have those disagreements behind closed doors, hash that stuff out, and not air dirty laundry for the whole entire world to see. Now, there are certainly times for that, but most of these are just disagreement. We're all Republicans, right? Most of us have a common vision of where we want to go, and most of these disagreements are really around the edges, and we can figure those out maybe in a less public setting than they currently are being handled.
Jeff Starling, it's been great talking to you. I give you the final word. Anything else you want to say, and tell us how people can find you elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate your time here, and thanks for having me in studio. I certainly look forward to running for Attorney General. Right now, if the race doesn't change, the primary in June of 2026 will decide who the next Oklahoma Attorney General is going to be. And we're off to a great start. We announced the 1st of July. We are getting great reception. People are really pining for that private sector individual who's practiced law at a national level and not looking for the career politician, just looking for the next political gig. So if you're out there and you hear me and you support that vision and want a private sector perspective in the government of Oklahoma, please go to my website, which is jeffstarling.com. That has information on me, information on the issues I see as donation information, and I'd certainly appreciate any support that you could provide. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you.